Morena, mai. We'll start with the karakia. Ko hauraki e tenai, e mihi ana ki te whenua. E tangi ana ki te tangata. Ko ngā hao e pūpuhi mai nei. Rere ki uta, rere ki tai, ti hei Māori ora. Here is hauraki, acknowledging the land, lamenting those who have passed. Winds here swell to the land, to the tides, a breath of life. Ngā mihi nui. Welcome everybody. We will get straight into it. Are there any apologies?
Yes. Through the chair, we had Councillor Rebel today.
Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder for apology?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any items not on the agenda today? There being none, any conflicts of interest?
Signage.
Signage. We know, please, that Councillor Grant has declared a conflict of interest potentially on signage, and we'll address that when we get to that item. Thank you. Strategy and planning, we'll go straight to item 2.1. Deliberations on the draft amended activities in public places bylaw. We have Meg Buddle here and we have Leslie here. Welcome, Meg. Councillors have been involved in the process. Do you have anything to add? Are you happy to answer questions?
Thank you, Leslie. I thought it might be useful if I gave a brief introduction because we realised that the council wasn't here right at the beginning of this process because it was kicked off in May last year. So we kicked off the review in May last year, and so this bylaw is a bylaw that manages all our activities in public places. So it covers things like busking, indoor dining, damage to public places, assemblies.
Search box.
Yeah, so we went out to consultation, from the end of October to early December, and the hearing took place earlier this year. Oh, for public places, there was no hearing. So
Yeah, we didn't have any.
We've only had 5 submissions on this bylaw, so we thought we could start. And so we had no hearing because nobody wanted to be heard. So we've now come to the part of the review where we have to make some decisions about our proposed bylaw. That's where we're sitting this brief. We'll come back to you once you've made the decisions today with the amended bylaw for adoption. Today is about making decisions on our proposals, and we went out with some proposed changes, and through the process, through the submissions and through further analysis, we a couple of other changes that we recommend we made to the bylaw. So we'll walk you through those, and we'll go. What we thought we'd do is go clause by clause through the resolutions and provide a little commentary and answer any questions as we go.
Thank you, Leslie. So can I get a mover and a seconder to receive the motion?
Oh, man.
So John and Rebecca, thank you. What I might suggest where you've got clauses that have like 1 through 5 where there are no changes, we'll deal with those as a block. Are we okay to do that?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go through clause by clause. I'm going to propose that we go clause 1 through 5. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Those are carried. So based on staff recommendations, no changes to those. We'll go to clause 6.
Your Worship, can I just jump in? Just to make it clear, where we've got clause 1, no change, that is no change to the version that went out for public consultation. Because there are some minor changes to the 2017 version, the current version that we have in place, but no change means that it's exactly as we consulted on.
So can we make sure that's noted, please? And who's doing that? Okay. Okay. All right.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got Donna recording.
So through the chair, what you're proposing is what we went out for proposal or stay the same?
Yes, That's where, what no change means.
Yeah.
As opposed to no change in the previous bylaws. Yes, thank you. Understood. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Is it possible just to have a brief understanding of what was changed between the original and now what will change? Is it, I don't want a lot of detail, just a quick sort of summary of it.
Yes, we can do
You
that.
happy to do that?
Yeah.
All right, so going back to number four, or any that have changed from the original bylaw?
So a number of the clauses were redrafted a tiny bit because we were just updating the language and bringing it into line with our current bylaw best practice drafting. So I could go through each that had those minor changes, or I could just go through ones where there was an actual substantive change that would change the way that the bylaw was
Just
applied. Yeah, because the clauses will look a little,
Yeah.
they'll look a little bit different from the 2017 version, but it doesn't mean that they're actually applied.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
So we'll be guided by you on which ones you want to address in terms of substantive change.
So for clauses 1 through 5, there was just minor drafting changes, no substantive change.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if we're happy with that, that stands, those are approved, and we'll go to clause 6, where we have got the change in the wording there.
Yeah, so would you like me to go over clause 6?
It's just the word trading, taking out shops is the key one there.
Yes, there were
Mobile
a
trading,
few.
which makes sense because it is a bit more of
Yes.
a global or holistic place to it. So it's fantastic. It's very good.
But it adds a definition of the mobile trading,
Yeah.
which I'm guessing was not there before.
That's correct. There are also a couple of other definitions that weren't there before, like assemblies, and then a few others that we consulted on, so there's no change from the consulted version, but they were added to the, we've chosen to go into the 2017.
So those changes don't change the structure of what it's already there. Then those small changes you've made, as long as it doesn't affect the
Exactly,
overall
yeah.
piece.
For me,
Okay,
yeah.
got it. Yep.
So when you say assembly, so we jumped forward past 6.
Yeah.
It's just we added a definition for assemblies into clause
okay.
6 from the previous version.
That's what we proposed. We went out with a proposal to include a new definition for assembly. So there's no change to that definition, but we're adding in on top of that, following from the submissions and further analysis, we're adding in the new definition of mobile trading.
Yeah.
And we are amending the definition of trading in the public place.
Yeah.
So mobile trading, public place establishments. So unless there's any further discussion on item 6, should we get that one off? Can I get a show of hands, please? All those in favour of item 6?
Yeah.
Those against? That's carried. So item 7, general public safety and nuisance.
Yes, so through the chair, we consulted on a substantive change to this clause, and that was that we wanted to remove the reference to vehicles and bicycles and a few other similar devices from the clause. The reason we wanted to do that is that this bylaw is not the best way to manage those devices like vehicles and bicycles. There's a lot of other different legislation, including national legislation, land transport rules that are usually the first place that the police go to when they're trying to manage vehicles or bicycles. So it doesn't really need to be in this bylaw in our view. And we consulted on that. We had 5 submissions, 2 supported, 2 were neutral and 2 opposed. Having looked at those submissions, we still think it's a good idea to take out vehicles and bicycles from the bylaw.
Yep.
And again, clause 7, there were some minor redrafting edits made to that.
So where would it fall in the other legislation or policy?
The first place I think the police would go to would be the land transport rule, so the land transport road user rule.
Okay.
So any further discussion on item 7? I just have one question. There's been some public debate recently about the use of hire scooters as opposed to and defining the difference between a hire scooter and a privately owned scooter. Does anything in this address that specifically, or is that separate?
No, nothing in this addresses that.
So if that issue came up in Thames Coromandel District, we would need to address that independently, or do we need to be looking at this bylaw to address that potential issue of whether to allow or not to allow the use of class scooters in our district?
Brian, did you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, this bylaw really deals with, say, like nuisance effects. So, and then it's a class scooter or a private scooter, this bylaw just about anyone's call a nuisance.
Regardless.
If we wanted to start to set some kind of rules about, and I don't know if it's alluded to, private scooters in Auckland.
I do.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if there's a bylaw change that would be a commercial operating license that would be looking at, which is already through this bylaw, and that'd be, I guess, council getting approval, permission to this bylaw to issue a commercial operating license for someone to set up a business that is trading on.
So this addresses the nuisance value regardless of whether it's higher or whether it's private.
And it gives the ability, if you could start to look at commercial operating license, that's already in the bylaw as well. So I don't think it'd be a final change, but it certainly would be on a scale that would be excellent back to you. I think the resolution.
Thank you.
So I just got a quick question if I can. So there's been quite a major increase in trikes and bikes and scooters and things in the coastal areas. It seems to be a pattern of change, even, you know, these cycle, everybody sits on and pedals around together. So it's an evolving thing, and it's getting more and more. We've got 50 odd trikes around town. So I don't know what the rules are about it, but everybody just seems to be able to work together on it, and there's no drama.
No, there isn't, and that's been touched on. Moving vehicles are against like a police issue, so that begins with that anyway. This stuff comes to power to deal with things that are used recklessly regardless, but in most cases, what we're doing there are vehicles or people on the road. We would be using our police friends to assist the business.
Someone has this too, but it's a bit hard to figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, it's all good.
But we do have powers in here. Yeah. Sure that to do.
Okay, any further discussion on clause 7? Just, could we note, please, that councillor Dolly was temporary?
Yeah, already done.
Thank you. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Very, thank you. Clause 8, delete in the form required by council for the last sentence of clause 8. Do we need further explanation on this one?
Through the chair, should I give you an overview of clause 8, like a couple? So clause 8 is again one of the things that we consulted on. It's called assembly, so it's about requiring organisers of large scale assemblies to notify the council before they carry out the assembly. And we consulted on that, and there were 5 submissions, 2 in support and 3 neutral. So what the text that you see here is that we wanted to tweak the wording of that version that we consulted on a little bit, basically just for clarity. But if you wanted me to explain more about the overall clause, I can do that.
So can I just get some clarity on what a large scale assembly?
Yes, I will need to look at the definition.
So I think that just to talk to the clarification is that we got one definition of providing permissions for the right purpose. We just want to be made aware of those so that we can deal with things that make the police aware of it and recommend license. What the wording just needs to be kind of further directed that they're likely going to, in performing an obstruction of a public place, be in breach of the bylaw and other sections, and that will still stand. So this section is simply about making us aware of it rather than giving. It's not about giving permission.
So you remember, Elaine, that the Zone 2 meeting, this was raised, and the legal implications that lawyers have about councils getting involved with deciding whether a assembly should happen or not. to the fact where they actually just said, very difficult to say no, but make it very difficult for them to jump the hoops through it if they think there's going to be an obstruction, or otherwise go straight to the police and get the backing of the police. So it's quite a sensitive area, really, and it's really strong that legal challenges have gone over it. We've heard a few recently that been raised in the media, etc. So, yeah, interesting.
So this is really about notification, isn't it? It's not about controlling the assembly and saying you can and can't do it. That crosses over into other legislation. This is about notification, so the council is aware. Have I got that right?
Yeah, but I think, Lena, I think it's about, if you feel that there's going to be problems there, how you deal with it up front before it gets to, because it's hard to say no. So you've got to make it difficult as possible for the people to actually put on that assembly. Otherwise, you're committed to, again, talking to the police, getting their backing to do it. If they think there's going to be some issues around it, there's going to be some.
Absolutely. So it depends on the type of assembly. So recently we've had the lecturers and teacher strikes. That was done without an issue. This clause will probably require them to make us aware of it.
Yeah.
We can then assess whether there's a risk in terms of, do police need to be aware? Is there some kind of road closure that we need to support?
Yes.
So not necessarily that we would be trying to make that one difficult. That would just be, we'd look at it going, no, actually, that's what we need to control. In Thames, I think it was on within the Mary Street area, so great vibes. So just making sure that we're aware that there's no other conflicts. That would be very different to someone who was going to say, I'm going to sit and block Pond Street for the next 48 hours. Again, we'll be made aware of that, but we'll go through different channels.
Just a quick question, if I can, Lynn. Yeah, as somebody sitting out on Pond Street blocking it, that's obviously a police matter and they have powers there. But what if we had an incident like Christchurch had recently, the private family sitting in on the public park there for a number of days, restricted access to that park. How would we as council deal with that, Brian?
So that was why we tried to change the wording in the bylaw, because that would likely be a breach of another section.
What section would, oh,
Section, could be section 7.
so we have got other.
Yeah. Or section 9, which we've tried to refer to. So those are about restricting public places or creating a nuisance to a scale that we would need to involve ourselves. The issue with this bylaw, if we're aware of, is the only option for enforcement is prosecution.
Yeah.
There's no infringement powers under this bylaw. So it would have to get to a level that council would be deciding that we'd be taking prosecution.
Yeah.
And first of all, that would be dealing with police to see what they want to do.
I would say the police would be our agent to deal with that, and they would come back to our bylaws to get their powers. Okay.
And so that's why just with section 8, we wanted to make sure that we reference the other two sections so that people were aware that this wasn't us saying you can go and do it. That would depend on the scale, because in all likelihood there will be some that will breach another section, and we wanted that to be clear. Others will be done pretty peacefully and there won't be a problem.
And this particular group, if I go back to the example the lawyer put up, was that they applied to hold a meeting in a place, in a call, and then they found out through their application that this was quite a pressure group and there was going to be an issue of it. So they tried to shut it down, and the council got taken to court over it and were told, freedom of speech. So you've got to do that stuff up front. You think it's going to be an issue, you can't do it afterwards given the approval. Yeah. So.
Question through the chair, Brian. So then, with respect to the right to peaceful protest or whatever, is council then given a very tricky situation of deciding who is, like you're saying up front, who do we think might actually be going to cause a problem?
Yeah.
And our only avenue is actually prosecution after the fact when we've gained permission. So is there a legal challenge if we say to a group, no, we actually don't want you to go into the park and have a gathering that day because we think you're going to be a problem? Can they challenge that decision legally?
Yeah, again, just coming back to the point of this section is to notify us, not for us to give permission.
To notify, not
Okay.
Yeah, and that's again.
So we don't end up in a position of sitting in judgment.
No,
Thank you. That's what I wanted to clarify.
And yes, why we also removed the let inform quite like council because we didn't want to make it look like it was a permission form. They just had to write to us to say this is what we intend to do.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Inform is not give permission to.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to get my head around that, thank you.
So just in terms of communicating to our communities, if I use an example, Whangamata recently where 70 locals got together at the park, Williamson Park, to look at Williamson Pond, they would, based on this, need to notify council or not?
No, it's a good point. When you write law, it doesn't always fit every example. So definitions can capture things that we, I guess, didn't intend to, and we always go back to the intent of what we're trying to. So public meaning the sort of pond is not what we're trying to capture here, so we wouldn't be expecting those people to notify us.
Okay.
If they said we are going to protest and occupy Williamson Park for 2 days because of the stormwater issues, then it probably falls into.
It's good to have that clarified because, you know, it might be a little bit. Thank you.
Because through the chair on that point, spontaneously, like 10 people might have decided to go and have a look at something and then 90 other people turned up to have a look at that thing as well, just went out on Facebook or whatever, you know, social media, so.
It's not organised, so it's just.
Yeah, so it is just a spontaneous event, isn't it?
Yeah, we're looking at things that are purposely looking to obstruct or
Yeah.
occupy space. So again, we're not trying to capture events.
A nuisance in the end,
Yeah.
you know, are you creating a nuisance?
Fantastic, thank you.
Through the chair.
No, you get it.
Oh, thanks, councillor Connell. So I wonder if I could just read out the definition of large scale assembly really quickly,
Thank
which
you.
might help. So only large scale assemblies need to notify the council. Every other assembly can just carry on as usual. So a large scale assembly is something that has the potential to obstruct a public place on a large scale. And then there are some examples that could be considered large scale assemblies that are likely to obstruct vehicular traffic for longer than 2 minutes. Assemblies that are likely to involve overnight occupation, and assemblies likely to obstruct neighbouring residents or premises. So there is
Blocking access.
some criteria for what we would consider large scale.
Awesome, thanks.
Again, coming back to this, which is notification only, but Coromandel, the occupation there of the council over reserve. Cell tower.
Potentially meets the definition of bylaws, so we would expect to be notified of giving permission to that. And in most cases, that example could potentially breach section 7 or section 9. We would be dealing with police in the first instance to resolve it, but not all of those powers in the bylaw to prosecute.
So part one is knowing about it, part two is what you do about it, and that's where things get tricky, as you know. So, all right, thank you. Rebecca, was your question answered?
Was exactly what I was going to say. Maybe if we heard the definition, would have clarified for everyone.
Any further discussion? There being none, I'll put the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried, thank you. Clause 9. By adding, but is not limited to before the list of examples. Nick, do you want to just give us a bit of an update on this one?
Yeah, so clause 9 is about obstructing public places. It's one of those general clauses. We made some minor drafting changes to the 2017 version that we consulted on. And this text that you see here, it's really just about making sure that there's a bullet pointed list. We want to make sure people know that we're not limited to those bullet pointed lists. So it's really just about adding further clarity to the text.
So adding in those words and giving additional scope.
Yeah, I have a question. So who polices this? Who decides this is, whatever happens in the park is not going to be dangerous or dangerous?
Your friendly local compliance team. Councils in the back of the room. So.
Okay, so they come along, just thinking again about some of the dramas we've had recently.
Yeah, and they're well trained to know what's within their ability to deal with and what needs to be using partnerships.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? There being none, we'll put it. All those in favour?
Okay.
Those against? Carried, thank you. Items 10 and 11, we'll take those together. Is there anything that we need to be aware of in those two?
I might split my explanation in two, if that's all right, your worship. So for clause 10, it's very similar to clause 9. It's that there were some minor drafting changes. We didn't receive any submissions and we're just carrying over the version that we consulted on. For clause 11, it's a new clause. It's about fireworks. And the reason we brought this in was that at the moment we have restrictions on fireworks and reserves, but those restrictions don't apply to other public places. And so we're carrying those reserve restrictions into this bylaw so that they apply to other places in the district.
So where is the information on that? I've lost it. I see it's not in this.
It wouldn't be upfront in these resolutions. There's some more discussion in the comprehensive report.
Right, okay. I mean, I remember seeing something. Yeah.
Essentially, it applies just public place.
Okay.
And then following conditions, basically the landowner, in most cases being us, approves of it, and then it complies with other legislation, pyrotechnical displays, and certainly for public firework displays, which would fit this, that there's a licensed pyrotechnical technician employed to organise it. So it's just a safety issue in terms of fireworks on public places. And obviously the first test is that us as a landowner approve of it. We won't even get into the B and C if we turn around and say, no, that's not an appropriate place.
So the Taira Pona would do this on a barge in the harbour. So is that an application through you or is that WRC or what?
There's no application process, so correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially as long as they have approval from the landowner, which that may be WRC.
It would be WRC.
Yeah, and they meet any other kind of health and safety legislation.
Okay. Any further discussion on 10 and 11? Being none, all those in favour? Those against? Carried, thank you. Item 12.
So would you like me to run over laws? And we might be able to deal with 12, 13 and 14 at the same time. So for all of those clauses, we made some minor edits to the 2017 version. We consulted on those edits. We didn't get any submissions. And so for the most part, we're proposing to retain clauses as we consulted, but there's one change you can see for clause 12, and that's just to remove the hyperlink from the explanatory note, because we've had our hyperlinks jump around a little bit and we think it's easier not to include a specific hyperlink in an explanatory note.
Bruce just maybe. That's me.
I wonder whether council would have that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Councillor Sinclair.
So when I was reading this, I was just thinking in terms of accessibility of the bylaw. This more or less assumes that everybody who accesses the bylaw is going to be accessing it with a computer, like it's an electronic version. So is that something that we need to worry about in terms of printed copies of the bylaw being available at service centres and libraries, and people going, oh, it's on the website? Well, that's not a very helpful thing. And is it possible to have, I don't know, appendix at the back of printed bylaws, or do you fully anticipate that nobody's going to be reading it in a hard copy?
Good chair. What I would say is that where there are printed copies, and I don't think there will be too many of those, but where there are staff in those services would be able to help you access the website.
Okay,
anyway,
cool.
that was the question.
Yes. Yeah, it was really just an accessibility issue so that anybody in the community, regardless of their digital literacy, can access the information that we provided. So.
So one that we discussed was the annual plan. If you go to the library or you go into a service centre, staff would be able to give you access to a computer and talk you through those things. But that was the question.
But yes, thank you.
Yeah, we also, through the chair, put, when the bylaw was adopted, we'll put the full text of the bylaw on our page, our web page, as well as having a PDF link, just to make it easier for, I think, for people with visual disabilities to be able to read it a bit easier and access it a bit easier, not having to go to the extra click to the PDF.
So even today, when you look at legislation, for example, proposed amended legislation, you look at and you've gone online, it's riddled with hyperlinks.
Yeah.
So click on this to go to the reference to the previous one or the new
Yeah.
one. So
No, I'm aware of that.
that's trying to read legislation without access to the links is. Martin?
Yeah, I mean, my only sort of reservation around taking that hyperlink out is that, yeah, up until recently, council's website wasn't fantastic as far as searching and things go. So I guess as long as we know that someone can go to the main TCDC website, type in such and such bylaw, and it appears relatively, you know, like on the first page rather than 3 or 4 down, and the latest one is at the top, just to make sure that, you know, that we're not making it more difficult for people by taking that link out. Yeah.
So Robin, your concern is that people that don't have easy access to computers and potentially have age issues or disability, they can.
Well, it was really more about whether any printed copies that were available for people would satisfy all of the ways that they needed to get further information about it. So, you know, if somebody who had a printed copy really wanted to know more about vehicle crossings, the hyperlink same website isn't amazingly useful, whereas a URL is. However, I hear that most people are not going to be having a printed copy that they're going to read over their breakfast, for example. And I'm extremely satisfied with the answers that staff have provided.
Yes, so the concern I have with printed copies are all hyperlinks.
Yes.
You can't access on the
True.
copies, so I've yet to see a printed copy that isn't full of hyperlinks.
Yeah.
So to follow on from Robin's comments, just making sure that there's comms around the fact that these bylaws have been amended, that you can pop into a service centre or a library and be talked through, you know, particularly the people who might find that the computer thing is a challenge. So yeah, it's just, our comms are pretty damn good, but getting that, hey, it's been passed or deliberated on. If you have any questions or anything, pop in, and if it's on the website, but you can pop in and get some assistance from those different venues.
Through the chair, we will take that point for adoption. So we will adopt the bylaw in a future meeting. I'm sure we can talk to you about that.
Yeah, cool, thank you.
When the bylaw was put up for consultation, there was a comms plan adopted at that point. And that comms plan, I'm sure that it has an adoption that there's a comms around the adoption.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I just talk about the vehicle crossings? It's quite a contentious issue, this, in some people, because access through their property, if it's got no curb and channeling and it's got a bit of a washout there, there's discussion here that they can be pushed or forced to organise and put one in. So there's a bit of feeling about where the responsibility lies. It's on council land, really. It's that berm approach to the house, and so there's a little bit of feedback. I don't know if you got any of that feedback through. You only got 5 submissions, I suppose. Was anything on this? Nothing. But I've had a comment about it saying, no, this is a wash through area where the swale comes through and it gets flooded and it washes the stuff out. And they're saying, am I responsible for that? So I just note that as being an issue. I don't know how it's policed, the tools.
So it's the same text as the previous bylaw, and the code of practice, or a development code of practice really sets out the design requirements of vehicle crossings. This bylaw is just essentially, we very rarely use it. I don't think we have actually, but as you know, anyone who doesn't involve a vehicle crossing, and you have a lot of properties that still just have a grass section in busy periods, that can be really difficult for public to know where I can park in front of that property to not obstruct access, because they would be blocking somebody in. And so really only extreme circumstances where that was happening really frequently would we go and speak to the property owner about this. Say, you keep getting blocked in because there's no vehicle crossing. Or if something has got to the point of such disrepair that, as you touch on, it's often counterfeit. If you're walking across that, if it's broken up so much that it's a trip hazard, essentially we would use this to go back and say, you need to repair.
Because there's two there's one with the lip curve, which is a flat crossing, drive over one, and then there's curve and channeling, which is a shaped and organised one.
Yeah.
So it's just understanding that.
And that's in the code of practice, that's set in the bylaw. This will just deal with the nuisance factor.
Okay, yep, as long as it's.
Okay,
Yep.
any further discussion? Let's put that, all those in favour? So just to be clear, 12, 13, all those in favour?
Aye.
Any those against? Carried. 15,
So for 15, it's very similar to that hyperlink change that I was talking about, clause 12. We wanted to take out specific hyperlink.
Okay,
So is this the datum line down the middle of the street between where dining is allowed and transport or people, pedestrians allowed?
Yeah, trading in public places and the general provisions that enable,
We've got datum points down the street.
yeah, we have.
enable, outdoor dining
Yeah.
facilities as well as commercial operator licenses. So even though you make valid decisions at a board level, hopefully to observe that processes, this bylaw also captures the fact that if you're going to commercially trade in a public place, you need to have permission from council. We make sure that that's not overly prescribed in the text, because every department will want that flexibility to be able to change.
Do they do that in Coromandel, John? Have they got a datum line on the road, so there's a dining area and a pedestrian? They don't do that.
I haven't seen that.
I don't think there's any outdoor dining in Coromandel. On the pavement.
It has been in the past, but at the moment, no.
Alice is saying,
Fruit here we go, they're just little silver dots
Yeah.
that on that.
Should have gone to Specsavers.
So they measured out by our team in their area, and it's like yearly license.
Yeah.
We would have.
I've seen the video now.
Why the last to know?
Have you never noticed that?
I haven't.
I've noticed them, I don't know what they're for. though.
Ah.
so if you've seen anything outside of those.
Yeah.
So I remember the policy.
Read the bylaw.
Thank you.
Okay,
That was spare time. Okay, so these specifically are deleting reference to the hyperlinks.
yes,
So I don't know that we need to dwell too much longer on these. So should we go, one of these 15 and 16 together?
And 17.
and 17?
And 17, they're all hyperlinks. All right, so I'm going to put 15, 16 and 17, all those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried, thank you. 18, 19, 20, 21. Anything that we need to know on these ones?
Just a quick overview. So those clauses as well as 16 and 17, that was a new block that was brought in the notified version just to deal with the approvals process. So we're bringing in similar clauses in our other bylaws to have a more standardised approach, or clauses for approvals, how you appeal, what things the council might consider natural justice type provisions. So that block, including 18, 19, 20 and 21, they're all new clauses. We didn't receive any submissions on them. And we're proposing to roll them over as they were consulted.
So roll them over as they're consulted on. But 16, 17 really is just about the specific hyperlinks. Do we need to know any more about these 18, 19, 20, 21? Is there any discussion or questions around those ones, Martin?
Well, I understand you're saying these will just be standard, like a standard block that's put into all the bylaws around approval and appealing and failure to comply and all that stuff. Right, okay.
Okay. All right. Vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. 22.
So clause 22 is the enforcement offences and penalties provision. It was in the 2017 bylaw and we edited it a little bit. We're proposing to further edit after public consultation. You can see the words on the screen, just for correctness.
I like it.
Breaching committee.
Any discussion?
In your worship, it might be good just to quickly touch on our enforcement approach with bylaws like this. Very much it's a reactive, where we get complaints, we will go and deal with the issues of the RFS so that you proposing to change that. There's no financial impact that we're suggesting in terms of what's required, unless the councillors wish us to take an approach in terms of going around with like 1 through, in which case we would have to either shift and reduce the service that we provide, say frequent camping, dogs, for parking that we do more proactively, or additional staff, but that's not our recommendation. We feel that we should continue with what we currently do, which is a on complaint.
Any questions? We'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you. And 23. Why does one after 23 say schedule 1? What are, so what are we working on here? 23 and the one after it?
Yes, so for clause 23, clause 23 is called approvals under a previous version of this bylaw. It's a new clause that we consulted on, and we thought it would be useful to clarify what happens if you had something under the 2017 version and whether that approval is still valid under the amended version. But there were no submissions on the consulted version, and we just keep proposing to keep it the same.
So if you have an outdoor dining license now, it will continue to until it comes up for renewal on the new bylaw, rather than having to get.
Yeah, rather than having to.
Clarification.
Okay. So what we're voting on is 23 and the one after it that says in my was schedule 1. Have I got that right?
Yep. And for schedule 1, again, some minor tweaks to the 2017 version, but we haven't changed it since public consultation.
Okay. Any further questions? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 4, request the chief executive instruct staff to make the changes in the draft amended activities in public places bylaw described in resolution 3 and submit the draft amended activities in public places bylaw to council for final approval of future council meeting. Any discussion on item 4? Being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Item 5, I'm not going to read it, you've got it in front of you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Thank you. Do I need further assistance for that? You better begin. Okay. 2.2, deliberations on the draft amended advertising and signs bylaw. We want to move to that. Let's do it. Councillors have the documentation in front of you. Megan, can you just give us an update on this, please?
Yes, so this bylaw moved at the same time as the public places bylaw. The council first looked at it in May last year. We consulted on it, went out for public consultation between October and December last year. And then you might all remember the hearing on the 22nd of February this year, where you heard from 5 of the 22 submitters spoke here. And now we're presenting the amendments to the bylaw for your decision.
I understand that John's going to sit aside on this one, is that correct?
Do we need, councillor Grant, do you need to sit out for the whole thing or just parts of it?
I think he doesn't like voting.
Maybe some guidance on in terms of conflict of interest.
I think it's a very minor one, but for the sake of proper process, I think I'll just stand
Okay.
out for it. Won't participate.
All right. Okay, so we're going to go clause 1 through 5. Is there any comment that we need on this, Meg, or are we just happy to move forward?
Pulling up my notes. So for clauses 1 through 5, there were some minor drafting changes to the 2017 version, and we consulted on those. And we did receive some submissions on a few of them, but the submissions after review, we thought that the text of the bylaw already gave effect to those submissions, so we're not proposing any changes to those clauses. And the clauses are they're quite administrative, as you'll see as you go through them. So we feel that they're currently appropriate. We don't need to change them.
You just set up the title of the bylaw, the purpose of the bylaw. So when it comes into effect.
Thank you, Leslie.
So presumably the December 2017 date will change to.
Yes.
Is this a
So there is some at the top of the bylaw on the title page. You have to go up 2 pages, sorry, Aaron. It talks about when the bylaw first came into force and then when it was reviewed. So the review date captures when it was last amended.
So, yeah, this one, you're renewing.
Yeah, so this is not a new bylaw. The bylaw was made in 2017 under the Local Government Act. We have to review a new bylaw within 5 years of it being made.
And
The
then,
bylaw stays the same, it's just amended.
and then it comes up for review 10 years after.
After that.
Yeah.
So that's what we've got up here. So
And we will change that May date to the date that you adopt this bylaw if you choose to adopt.
And then the next review date is 10 years, then that's.
Unless there's some issue arising that we feel we really need to make a change to this bylaw.
We could review it then if we want to,
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, can I ask a sort of a left field question? I'm just cognizant of the Kuatunu Peninsula Dark Sky heat pole and their request to have the lumens or the downlighting or whatever on illuminated signs. Where does that fit in to here? They
Very
may.
good question.
Through the chair, I can talk to that later on when we get to it because they did submit on this.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Meg. I'm just thinking whereabouts do they have ability to tweak that? Yeah.
So we'll, what, 1 through 5, all those in favour?
Aye.
Yes. Very, thank you. Okay, item 6.
illuminated sign.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm just being advised, I need a mover and seconder for this, please.
Happy to move.
Terry
And
and
I'll second.
Ellie, thank you. Okay, we'll go.
I'll just have my eyes on the illuminated sign.
Yes.
It's me.
All right, so maybe you can just give us a.
Yes, so clause 6 is the definitions or interpretation clause. And we had a few submitters recommending some changes to the definitions. We've reviewed those submissions and we've decided to make a few changes. So the first 2 are those ones at the top, illuminated signs and changeable message signs. So these respond to submissions by Waka Kotahi and by the Kuatunu Dark Skies Trust and I think the Hahe Residents and Ratepayers Association. A lot of people were interested in these illuminated signs, digital billboards, changeable message signs provisions, and you'll see these come up several times in the resolutions. The approach we landed on was that we've changed some of the restrictions in Schedule 5, and we've also brought in some new restrictions on illuminated signs. So a sign that is static but has a light shining on it or a light from behind or within illuminated, because those restrictions were currently in the bylaw. So that's the reason for that first new definition. The second definition, we wanted to switch the term from digital billboard to changeable message sign, which is a bit of a mouthful, I know, but it's it aligns more with terms used by NZTA and the neighbouring councils such as Auckland Council, and I feel it also just is more distinct now that we have this illuminated sign definition in the mix.
So just bringing this down to a specific example, the guy on Buffalo Beach Road has this motel sign with an LED shining at it, which just seems to shine directly into the light, the eyes of the drivers going past. This will cover something like that, as an example.
I wonder if we deal with that question when we're looking at the specific restrictions. Are you happy with that? Because those are right down at the bottom of Schedule 5, and it might be that we discuss that for a while. But this clause is just about the kinds of definitions that we're using.
Okay, thank you.
So as you'll see, there are some other changes to the definition section as well. The one about roadway instead of road carriageway, that was Waka Kotahi's suggestion, and we've gone with their direction on that. And lastly, the amendment to the definition of a sign. We are proposing to take out the reference to election signs, and that is based on further staff review since public consultation. We felt that some of the other changes we were making, for instance, these new illuminated sign restrictions, those would apply to election signs, and we were worried about the conflict between this bylaw's regulation of election signs and their national regulation of election signs, because, for instance, in some of the national regulation, there is restrictions on illuminated signs. So we found it was best that the bylaw stays silent on election signage. I'm not sure if Leslie or Brian, you want to add to that anymore, but that is the change that we're proposing.
I think the difference between Auckland and here and election signs is that we can't put election signs on public places, whereas in Auckland they can. So theirs is very much on those public areas, where ours has got to be in private property or something like that. So quite a difference in terms of where they fit. So you can understand you're keeping away from that discussion.
So this takes out altogether, when it's the definition of a sign, it takes out completely anything with reference to election signs.
Yeah.
So the question is, are we happy with that?
Yeah.
If that's addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to talk to that, what we found going through after consultation is that we probably didn't go far enough in defining certain rules that we've got for election signs. And so we either have to come back to some stage in the future and consult on specific rules to election signs, which would include for local election, when those should go up, when those should be taken down, and the like, where they should be placed. Currently, the bylaw has always been silent on that, and we just don't want there to be a middle ground where they're captured by general rules without having anything specific, like real estate signs that has specific conditions. And we probably didn't go far enough when we were looking at to apply by rules. So if it becomes an issue in the future, there are options where we do that through a policy, whether we come back and do a bylaw change just specific to election signs, something for review, or whether we just leave it silent and then touch on deal with it through the national legislation where appropriate.
So you can ask a question through that too, with illuminated election signs, is that included?
I think that's what being touched on, that the legislation may.
Yeah, there are some restrictions in the Electoral Act, for instance, about and regulations under the Electoral Act about illuminating an election sign for traffic safety. Yeah, so as I said before, we're suggesting that the bylaw remains silent on election signs.
I'm sure I believe that.
So just to get it clear in my own mind, sorry, is if we stay silent on election signs, are we then completely reliant on the national legislation? There's nothing in our local bylaws which gives us any input into election signs, or are we completely reliant on national?
Under the election policy, that was very clear that came out from Guy and who else was, Kelly O'Donnell was working with it too. They had rules around it. And the only rules that was difficult was said, when can you take your signs down? And no one knew about it, but they said because it was a ballot vote by mail, you could leave them right up until the election, in fact, after. So
yeah, it's the local electoral act that we probably missed a little bit because the general is sort of restricted in what can and can't be done. And like, as I touched on, we haven't had election signs in this bylaw. Because we don't give permission for them to be on public places, as Terry's touched on, that's the previous bylaw as well. The activities of public places are, putting an object on a public place. There doesn't seem to be anything that becomes in the shoes as a nuisance or obstruction. When we get complaint, quasi-political complaints about how long the signs are up or the like, which we may have to come back to you in a future iteration of the bylaw and find out specifically if that's what we want to do. But we didn't include that in the draft, and so we didn't go for consultation on that. And so we feel we're limited to what we could determine
At this stage, I don't think we did sufficient analysis to be sure that we were well aligned with legislation. And it's just that for the avoidance of doubt, we thought we'd better just remove this because, we're not on entirely solid ground in terms of policy position.
Martin?
So, as after taking part in the last election, there was quite a bit of angst about certain signs, and even after the election, I think Councillor Sinclair and myself were threatened with $20,000 fines from some people because our signs were still up the following day. And I think also there was a lot of issues around certain signs being put up on Road Reserve, on Waka Kotahi, Road Reserve on private land. And it was only really within just a few days of the election that some, sort of enforcement stuff happened. And I appreciate that the enforcement people were probably treading that fine line politically. But I'm just a little bit concerned that if we take this out altogether and we're just going to rely upon the Electoral Act.
Yes, but I guess what we're saying is that if it's an issue, we should do it properly. What we didn't go out in consultation with those specific rules.
Okay.
And so we're acknowledging that if it is an issue, we can bring something back to you in future, specifically around election rules that we should consult on. We didn't in this case, and so for avoidance of doubt, we don't want election signs to be captured by the general rules of the bylaw. They should have specific rules like real estate signs in terms of locations, timeframes, and the like. So
I agree.
so that is something that we can look at fix before the next local election. It's not as pressured on the general election because it's a little bit of control through legislation. But yes, it's a valid point, and I think that's what we picked up through the review and after consultation was that if we wanted to put this in, we should have been a little bit more specific in what we wanted.
So would it be appropriate for us to make some sort of note about how we would like local election specific bylaw review done between now and whatever date?
Yeah, so what we can discuss with you in a future date is whether that's best done through a policy, like a TCDC policy that's signed, we put that online, or whether we want to try that into our rules and whatever that you steer us, we can start up that work.
So the only thing that I would suggest is missing from the definition of the sign is a sign that is on a parked stationary vehicle, including a trailer. Does that need to be addressed?
I think
That's
sign doesn't include
unmovable.
Any symbol, display or device intended to attract attention includes those affixed to and on basic or wall, fence, building structure or incorporated within the design of the structure or building. So sign on the back of a trailer park or the side of the road. Yeah.
Is a sign that is intended to attract attention.
Any sign.
Any
is both, so that covers.
Display or device.
Yeah, I think it was more specific in the previous wording, in the previous bylaw, but we would certainly interpret that it is any advertising material on anything or in the public space.
All right, enough time on this?
Yeah.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes. Very, thank you. Item 7 was just changing digital billboards to change the message signs, illuminated signs. Any discussion? Those in favour?
Aye.
Item 8. Safety. Meg, do you want to just give us a summary on this one?
Yes, sure. So clause 8 is the general requirements for public safety, traffic safety and maintenance. We did some minor edits to it and consulted on those. And now either based on submissions or based on further staff review, we're proposing those for minor changes, further minor changes to the text of clause 8. And they're there for you to read. They don't change the application of any of those provisions.
Right. Any questions? Any discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Very, thank you. Line 10 and 11. Anything you need to know about those ones?
So clause 9, removal of signs once no longer required. We introduced this in the consulted version that it wasn't there in the 2017 version, just thought it would be a useful device. And we had 14 submissions in support on this new clause and 4 neutral submissions. So we think it's appropriate to continue or retain this clause, new clause as notified.
Mhm.
Okay, any questions? Any discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes. Very, thank you. Clause 12.
Yes, so clause, oh, sorry, have we jumped to clause 12?
Yes.
Because I can.
Did you have anything that we needed to be aware of in line 10 and 11?
I'm happy to talk to you about 10 and 11 as well as 9, but if you want to move to clause 12, then we can do that.
Kind of just done 9, 10 and 11. So unless we've missed anything that you feel that we need to know about. So 12, please.
Clause 12. So clause 12 is the body clause for Schedule 5, which has the actual restrictions for these things, illuminated signs and changeable message signs. So as you can see, it's we're only making one small change to that simple sentence. That's
The 10 working days, the sign must come down.
no, clause 12, we're proposing to pull out the digital billboard wording and replace it with changeable message signs.
So 12, so 13 is about the, yes.
So we'll deal with 12 first. Any further questions? All those in favour? 13, that's the 10.
Yeah, this is the one that's.
It seems like a long time, is it just me?
Well, some people expect a month later if they can pull things off. It depends on the event that's going on, if it's a big festival or something like that, weather imposing times, it could be an issue about pulling the sign off. So I don't know how you got to 10 days. How did you get to that figure?
So we didn't change this clause from the 2017 version, and I had a look at the 2017 report. There was quite a bit of analysis done about what would be appropriate and whether you should have a few different categories for sort of really long events with a lot of signage, really long lead-in events, shorter lead-in events, and so we've just relied on that analysis that was done in 2017.
So the summer concert in Whitianga, it's finished, it's over, CC Top is still up there on the billboard and it's up there. At day 11, someone knocks on the door of Roy's and says, take the sign down, but it's, I'm guessing it's just a mechanism in case it's leaning, nothing's going to be jumped up or down.
It'll certainly be used. Like those previous provisions where we need to start tidying up areas that signs are just up for too long. So we won't be up there on day 10 proactively.
Sometimes you get rolling events, and how does that affect it?
It'll be, I would say we would interpret from the 10 days after the last event.
So sometimes we get markets that go every 2 weeks,
Yeah, that's
14 days.
Yeah, we have other issues with the market signs, but look, again, similar to the previous bylaw that we touched on, enforcement approach is going to be really on complaint.
Yeah,
If there was an immediate traffic safety issue, we would probably deal with that proactively, like when people place things in roundabouts and really big signs, and we'll deal with that. But otherwise, it would take someone to complain that the market sign is still up and it's been 10 days after the market, and we would contact the market and say, could you take your signs down? And they make sure and say, we've got another market in 10 days' time, in which case we would probably leave that alone. Yeah, but talk to them about just how they can put them in better locations.
So this covers all events.
all signs, I guess.
All of their signs.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything further on 13? So just dealing with 13, all those in favour?
I
14, anything we need to know about?
So clause 14, again, it's the body clause that links to a schedule 4. And there are some changes to schedule 4, but we haven't made any changes to the clause itself since public consultation.
Were there submissions on this?
Those ones.
So it depends on whether you class them as being on this clause specifically or on the schedule 4, because most of them were about the restrictions on real estate signs, which mostly sit in schedule 4. So we've dealt with all of those submissions just for convenience. We've dealt with them under schedule 4.
It was very good too, yeah. All right, so as long as everyone's, is there any discussion around this?
Yeah, we had an example. One of the submissions was around, where it says that the sign must comply, blah, 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 must be located within the boundary of the property to which they relate. There's a real estate agent's sign just promoting herself on the entrance into Hahe. So it's not actually on a property that she is selling.
Yes.
And so I remember one of the submissions was around that.
Yes.
So how does that work in the scheme of things?
Yeah, so through the chair, I think the difference is that when it's a real estate agent promoting themselves, it's more of a commercial sign. It's not trying to sell a property. And so the definition of a real estate sign is quite specific in that it's about advertising the property and not the real estate agent. And we felt it was appropriate to continue that. So if it's just advertising the agency or the agent, then it's not dealt with under Schedule 4. It's just the general other provisions, which also govern other commercial signage, billboards, advertising, a business.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so on 14, any further discussion? Those in favour?
I
Okay, 15.
So 15, the general exemptions clause, there was one substantial change we proposed in our notified bylaw. It's about, it's the one at C. So we thought it would be appropriate to require that other agencies like DOC or FENS, that they had to get our permission before they went and put up a sign on council land. And we did, so this clause doesn't change since public consultation. But just flagging for you that that is a new substantial change to the 2017 bylaw. We did talk to a lot of different relevant agencies like DOC and FENS, and they were all comfortable with this new change.
I think it's fantastic. We've always had a sign fest with all the different agencies putting it up, getting it together, we'll get some common sense about how signage should go up. So I think it's a great move.
So the question that comes to my mind is around right-of-way signs. So if a right-of-way has to be placed on the beach and signage goes up, who authorises that and what's the process to make it, because it has to happen fast.
So if that beach was council land, they would need to get council permission. And in terms of the process for that might be something that Brian.
Is that a simple phone call? Yeah. Just as easy as that.
Yeah, often those signs do look somewhat, like someone's just you know, got a little bit of cornflake or something and just written on it. And I don't know if then a few days after that, a more official sign goes up, but often it does look really unofficial, and that worries me that people would then say, oh, well, I ignored that sign because it just was written in crayon or
So,
vivid marker or something.
no, I agree, and there's probably just a difference we need to point out between the general exceptions and the specific exceptions. So the specific is something that is more commercial, like a your typical sign, they don't meet the schedule requirements and they need to write it, and I think we delegate that typically to Aileen, and sometimes down to myself or council to approve those, and we wouldn't be looking at design requirements and messaging and like an artwork sign would potentially fit into a directional information sign without approval, so that would be much more informal. And in which case we may not always know the design. So it would be, I guess, yeah, it would be the initial get it done, but with them to basically.
So potentially, yes, it can go up in a very handwritten informed way, but then be replaced a day later with.
Yeah.
And most of the processes there.
Yeah.
Quick and easy.
And in most cases, I think we are seeing formal signs now.
I think this is an opportunity to design the proper sign set. So you even got an opportunity to have an area for a slot in for something like this. You know, just banging up signs everywhere is crazy. We need to have a really structured approach to this and consider those things. Just have it like a flip flap or a slide in or something like that.
Are you concerned about the proliferation of multiple signs from different agencies which are all saying different things?
All saying a whole lot of messages, yeah, and confusing, really confusing. And then you have five, I know the poetry, there's seven, I think 5 or 7 signs in a row, all saying different things from dog to Kiwi people to this, all this information, but it should be in a structured place and enough information just to people keep it clear. You know, just boom points, not a whole story that's complicated. And
Can I bring it back to 15? Does what Councillor Walker is saying, does this address any of that, or is that sort of a different area? In other words,
No, it addresses that exception. It comes down to that level of permission that we provide. So as I touched on, it would be a pretty quick approval in most cases, but if we've got an issue here, then the internal process needs to be more around the design parameters that Councillor Walker said.
give us some thought, give us some good thought about those.
Yeah, so we can go and take that on, which would mean that, yeah, essentially, if you're another agency and you get a submission, we may
Incorporate them into it.
go back to and say, well, yeah, okay, but it's common sense into this.
I think a practical example is it's happening now at Hanhei, where I think they found there was about 6 agency signs, but all tagged onto ours,
Yeah.
our big sign, and then, you know, so I think they're tidying that up at the moment.
Right, it's just becoming an issue, seeing that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, you get the sort of pop-up ones when the dotterels are breeding and things as well, so.
I do want to touch it, so that's, the bylaw allows us to do that now, that's a great change, that's going to take some time, as I touched on.
Yeah. So the flip flap sign you got with dogs, great. So you thought about it on that respect.
Those are our signs, yeah, so in terms of controlling other agency signs, there may be a project that, quite often in the quiet periods, of the year, coming into June, bylaws can pick up something to tidy up. Maybe that was going to say, it's stuff.
It's even the tsunami stuff that could be considered.
okay. Any further discussion? All those in favour? 16.
Would you like me to run over clause 16? So clause 16 is about specific exemptions. So say a business person doesn't comply with the requirements of this bylaw, they need to apply to the council to get an exemption. We did a few edits to that clause before public consultation. We received a couple of submissions suggesting further changes. On review, we think the wording of the clause is appropriate and no changes were required to respond to the submissions apart from this change, if you scroll down a little bit, there is just the hyperlink, removing one of the hyperlinks. Perhaps there isn't. In my version, we do have a explanatory note in there, and it's suggesting, let me go back. We're proposing to add a new explanatory note that just says for more information about how to apply for a specific exemption, visit the council's website.
So this is adding in that explanatory note.
Yes.
Which is pretty sensible. Do we need any further discussion on that? Adding in that explanatory note?
I think it's good. There was quite a bit of interaction with this with the submitters, wasn't it?
Yes, so I can't remember the name of the submitters off the top of my head, but I recall one submitter in particular was
16, yeah.
yes, was keen to perhaps introduce some more guidance about what the council would consider when it was approving or declining an application for an exemption. And we talked about it within the staff and thought that it's best to not include a lot of criteria or a lot of examples, because we would deal with each application on its merits. And and yes, so that's why we thought we would keep the clause as it's currently drafted.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
17.
17, this is the old enforcement offences and penalties clause, and it's this exact same change you saw before for the public places bylaw.
Okay. We needed discussion on that. Being changed to comply with current legislation. All those in favour? 18 and 19.
So 18 and 19, they were new, included in this new bylaw because it's an amended bylaw. It's similar to what was with the public places bylaw. We wanted to know clear what happened if you had an approval under the previous version. And we didn't receive any submissions on those clauses, and so we're just proposing to keep them the same as when they were notified.
Any discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Schedule 1.
Okay, so Schedule 1, it's the additional controls for signs within specified areas, and it's divided up into 3 different tables, and they relate to different kind of zones, as you would think of them under the district plan. So residential areas, commercial and industrial areas, and rural and recreational areas. We did receive a number of submissions on this schedule. I'm not proposing to go through all of the different submission forms, but I can if you would like me to talk about a specific thing. We reviewed all of those submissions, and as a result, we don't think there's any substantive change to the schedule. We're just proposing to add in table 1, 2, and 3 so that we can reference the tables easily.
Okay. Answer.
Yeah, just sort of on that first, under the flat mounted wall sign and freestanding, under size and height, it says maximum combined signs area of that, but next it says maximum 1 per premise. So you couldn't have signs if there was only 1.
So is that the first table?
Yeah.
Yeah. And sorry, was it the last column?
So under size and height, it's got maximum combined signs, but then the next thing says only 1 per premise anyway.
I think it'll be within 3 square metres maximum out of those sides, isn't it?
Yeah, but what they're saying is you can only have 1 there, so therefore
So
you can't combine the signs because there's only
But-
1.
Maybe 1.
Can I, if you were 2 businesses sharing one locality, could you each have a sign? Is that why it's sign/signs?
I think it's signs because it's before it was maximum combined. So I think it's just trying to reference that you may have multiple
Signs, but it's not over that
one sign.
area.
So you only have one of those objects
Yeah.
there. However, it might be made up of 2 or 3 signs of them. Yep.
within
that object.
So would that apply to like a mall or an alleyway or
No,
something?
this is residential.
So
So
as Councillor Walker touched on, with those agency signs, rather than having them all separate, you may have them in one thing. And that would be seen as the maximum of one per premises, but in that, it may have.
Yeah.
Multiple measures.
Adding up to that square metre.
Yeah, and what we're saying is the combination of all of those together, it can't be an area of greater than 3 square metres.
Yeah,
That would be like a B&B sign or something. Accommodation.
Yeah, it will be those type of signs, yeah.
when you go to an office where it's got lawyers and accountants and whatever, same office, so.
This is residential.
this is residential.
This is not.
Preference, yeah.
It's got your village and waterfront zone, so you're able to get,
One sort of building.
yeah.
It'll be bootlegging, those kind of things,
Yeah,
advertising.
All right, any other questions, any further discussion on this one?
All good.
All those in favour? That's it.
So can I just, Ryan?
Through the chair.
Carry on.
Where did you get that number 3 square metres from? Is it just a generic?
I'm sorry, discussion on this is closed.
So that's right.
Good on you, Ed.
And Meg may go into more detail, but my understanding is when we moved to the 517, NTTA, one line of input in terms of sizing of the structures and the text based on road safety.
So with the move to more electronic signs, that doesn't include that, it becomes a different factor altogether, or does that fall into that 3 square metres?
I think if it's a sign that's an illuminated sign or changeable message sign, then Schedule 5 would be the place to go to.
I'm thinking of, like a aged care centre or something in a residential area might have a sign entry or something like that.
So if it's illuminated, and then it would be dealt with under Schedule 5. So we can look at that fairly shortly.
Schedule 2.
Wonderful. So Schedule 2 and 3, we didn't make any changes to those from the 2017 version, and we didn't receive any submissions, so we're just proposing to keep it the same,
And 3?
same as Schedule 3.
Okay, so we'll take 2 and 3 together. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Thank you. Schedule 4.
Schedule 4 is the.
Sorry, Meg, before you go on, just we're going to work through to the beginning of Schedule 5, which I know is going to generate a bit of interest, and then we're going to have.
Okay.
So we'll go through Schedule 4, please, and stop when we get to Schedule 5.
So Schedule 4, there is the real estate restrictions. We consulted on one specific change to this, and that was about the maximum height for real estate directional signs. So those arrows, or things like that. And under the 2017 bylaw, you could have them up to 4 metres high, which was not appropriate for traffic safety. So we have taken that height limit down to 0.9 metres based on advice from our roading manager. That was the main thing we consulted on. Since consultation, there are 3 changes we're proposing to make to the text. And one of them, I think, is in response to a submission, and then the other 2 are based on further staff review of that. And in terms of all of the other submissions, we looked at those, but we felt that the schedule didn't need to change to respond to those submissions.
I think tagging any other reason gives you some latitude in your head, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion, Martha, please?
Yes, on the bottom of page 15, it's got under the flags and or banners for open homes and auctions. And then it says, so long as the flag must be secured to the property or a vehicle, so long as the flag banner does not protrude from the side of the vehicle on the roadside or pavement. So how is that possible for it to not protrude?
Normally put those banners under the wheel too, don't they?
Yeah, I understand that, but the banner will still protrude
From the vehicle.
from the vehicle unless it's secured halfway under the vehicle.
On the roadside of pavement, so it has to be up the driveway.
No, but there it's saying it can be attached to a vehicle as long as it doesn't protrude. But if it's a flag attached to at the bottom of a wheel, it's going to protrude onto the pavement or the road.
No, you have to be in the property. Parked.
Yeah, I get that, but it's in here saying you can only do it if that, but it's not possible to do that.
It's up on the screen, so I think it must either be on the property or secured to a parked
Parked
vehicle
vehicle.
directly outside
Ah.
of that property. That's what Councillor Roberts talking about,
Mm.
as long as it doesn't protrude from the side of it.
And most of those are kind of like the
I
coffee
know, yeah.
ones that flap around, and it's impossible for it not to protrude.
Yeah, so this is just for real estate signs, open.
Yeah, sorry, I meant that, yeah.
Just for clarity, staff recommending that they should be on the pedestrian, the footpath side of the vehicle then, if it's going to be attached to a,
Some are on towpaths too.
That's what I'm saying.
yeah. So it says that it can protrude, but just the roadside or pavement, okay. So it can't-
I think
Do you see what I mean? You can't have a flag that's not protruding.
So,
It's on the pavement side.
No, it says it there.
so we didn't change this from the 2017 version. It's been a while since I've looked at this in detail, but I would say that the intent behind it is that it doesn't go into the roadway. It doesn't protrude into that side of the road and it's supposed to. If it protrudes anywhere, it should be towards the footpath. But potentially it's something that we need to
I
make.
think the
sure that
wording
is-
is what
is-
Mark's about, eh?
Yeah.
Getting the way
Yeah,
to do it.
The intent is that you're not walking on the pavement and blocks obstructed by a flag or a vehicle driving past that vehicle and is obstructed or impeded by a flag. So in most cases, they are thin flags that are pretty much straight up above a vehicle. And that's essentially, I guess, what we're trying to capture there are those extremes. Whereas
Yeah, I can see what you're trying to say, and I can hear what Martin's saying too. It's kind of, we need another word there that says it doesn't interfere with people's traffic.
Some of them do have those
Obstruct.
banana
Yeah.
signs that sort of
Yeah,
fall out from the
I think the
vehicle.
main thing's not triggering the road side.
it does not obstruct, I think it's a good word.
And maybe just remove all pavement. And the point is that we want those flags to be on the pedestrian side, and then if they are obstructing the footpath, we'll deal with them through our other public.
I think the wording is important because people sometimes take the wording and say, this is what it
Yeah.
says. And Martin's right, but they'll play on that.
So, Leslie, through the chair, is that something we could look at and propose back to the councillors at the adoption stage if we needed to change the decision?
Obstruct sounds a good way of saying it instead of protrude.
So a flag bearer does not obstruct the roadside of pavement.
Access.
I mean, we could,
Obstruct vehicles or pedestrians.
through the chair, I mean, could we leave you, if people
Think
are,
about it.
Are you happy for?
Yes.
Yeah, you'll come up with.
This- we just come back with an additional decision to be made at adoption. Because you'll have to resolve it.
We can do that at adoption.
Yeah, we can do it at adoption. We'll just
We
need.
delegate authority to you, get the wording in there, and we will adopt.
We need it to adoption.
I'm happy with that. Is everyone okay with that?
Yep.
You've got the clear message about the concern and the intent, so. Any further discussion on 14? All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Right, the next proposal on the table is T. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Right.
oh, cup of tea. What am I putting on? Yeah, a little joke. Sure. Everything go all right?
If you've been.
What, 8:30?
Very, no, 10 hours, exactly. You said we-
Taking it all up.